Hey Beans, welcome to King of the Bean. I'm Ian, this is Josh, and this is Ryan.
I'm Ryan. Hi.
I'm Josh.
So the premise of this show is that each week we will decide a King of the Bean who sits in the lovely Bean King throne chair, and the king gets to decide the topic of conversation for this particular episode.
And the way that we're going to determine who picks the topic of the week is through our little bean dispensary here. Each person is going to call out a color for that week, and whichever color comes out more is going to be the king of the bean for the week.
Hey guys, welcome back to King of the Bean. I'm Josh, this is Ryan, and this is Ian.
I'm Ryan.
Alright, we are now going to decide who is going to be the next king of the bean.
Bean,
Oh, well, that's on the floor now.
Alright. Wait, we gotta pick colors.
Pick colors while I'm turning it.
Pink.
Pink?
Green.
Green. I wonder why. Alright.
I need to steal green from Ian more often, otherwise he's never gonna be anything.
We got red.
Red? Wait, what did you pick?
I picked nothing.
No, you have to pick one.
Well,
That's how it works. That's how this whole thing works.
orange.
You can't pick it
Red.
after the fact.
Listen, you can because we have a green. No, that's not even green. I'm colorblind. I'm brown.
Well, restart.
That's
we need
purple.
to restart this.
Yeah, we're
This is
restarting.
janky.
Fine.
You gotta pick a color, my dude. That's the whole gimmick here.
Fine. I'll put it back. You know what? Those just live there.
Yeah, that's fine.
Those just. All right.
No, stop doing it before you look at the colors. You gotta pick a color.
What do you want?
No.
No.
Okay.
I veto all of this. We're not cheating. We're doing it right.
What color did you pick? He picked orange. He would have.
I
If
picked-
we stuck with our original color.
I picked pink.
Yeah, Josh would have won.
Okay.
All right, we're doing it.
So, what is your colors?
It's blue.
Pink.
There's no blue in there, I think.
There's not.
Okay. Orange.
Pink, and green.
Good lord. Okay, now you spin the doodle.
Yeah.
And now, after we pick colors, we see what the colors is.
All right. Oh, look. There's blue.
Oh, look at that.
That's not the color we're going with, though. And we got
Well, now you know.
red. We got pink.
Oh.
Different. And what do you know? Oh, shoot. Orange.
All right, another tiebreaker between you and me. Spinner do it good, the bird again.
All right.
Wait,
What color?
are you sticking colors?
Yes,
I'm sticking with
I'm
it.
sticking colors.
Me too.
All right, cool. We got
3 greens.
we got red.
Okay. Man, if someone picked red, they would be winning.
I know, right? And red. All right, let's just.
Make sure you get a good 5.
You'll get 3 and like it. We got orange.
All right, that's 2 for Josh.
We got pink.
Okay, that's 2 for me.
We have red.
Okay, that's red wins.
We have purple. Sure.
Okay.
We have red. And we have orange.
All right, Josh wins again. Fair and square.
Fair
is
and
square.
I got a topic on hand.
Okay, perfect.
Alright.
All right.
So this is gonna be a topic of origin. The origin of what we were originally trying to make this whole podcast about. Horror movies. Let's talk about some horror movies.
Nobody knows the secret origin. We're not gonna tell you.
Oh, I was about to say it.
We'll save that for later.
Alright.
The secret origin of this.
So horror movies. So for everyone out there, I am a big fan of horror movies. I find horror movies to be hilarious because a lot of the people in horror movies are very dumb.
Yes.
And they're very comedically dumb in my
Yes.
point of view.
Yes.
Alright, so let's just start this off with a very simple way. What are your guys' favorite horror movies? If you have
Favorite horror movies. I would say. Hey, that's what we have notepads for. I would say some of my favorites. To piggyback on a point you just made about characters being dumb in horror movies.
Uh-huh.
Conversely, I really liked Nope.
Nope.
One, because Nope was a great movie overall, except I didn't like the end of it. I thought it was anticlimactic in a lot of ways. But the first 2 acts especially I thought were fantastically done. Jordan Peele is a great director.
I love when they finally said no.
Yeah, well,
They
that's
did so good.
and that's the thing about it, right? Is in almost any other horror movie, right? In that scene where he's in the truck and he's like, his truck shuts down and he's like, I gotta get home. They would get out of the car and they'd be like, I can make it home, and he'd try to run home, and then they wouldn't make it, right?
Yeah, they see.
But in Nope, he opens the door and he's like, nope, and he shuts the door and he sleeps in his car all night.
So great.
And
so
it's
great.
like that takes the whole trope that we were talking about earlier and turns it on its head, and that's fantastic. And then aside from that, you had the great vibes of the movie and the build up to it and the mystery of it, and you think it's aliens, but like, what is it actually?
I'm looking up horror movies because I don't know them off the top of my head. I'm not a big horror buff like you guys.
That's fine.
Is Shape of Water a horror movie?
I would
I
not
wouldn't
classify
Because
it as a horror
this
movie.
came up as like top picks.
Wait, read them out and let's classify which ones are horror movies. 'Cause I'm
Okay,
sure.
but before you get to that, I do like Shape of Water. I did think it was a great movie.
So
I think.
for the top picks for you, it has Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey,
Sure.
Is that like that fan-made
It's
horror
the new one because the license.
The New Mutants, Upgrade, The Dark Tower, Evil Dead Rise, Sweeney Todd the movie.
Is that the new Evil Dead?
Yeah.
That looks creepy. I want to see that.
The Cloverfield Paradox.
I haven't seen Cloverfield, but I've heard it's good.
They're okay.
Mortal Instruments,
Never seen that one.
City of Bones. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
That's horror-esque, yeah.
Sure.
It's horror-esque.
It
District
is.
9.
I would not classify it though.
I would not classify it.
The Witches.
Which,
Rocky Horror Picture Show, and then The Shape of Water.
See, that's
And
what
Morbius.
Morbius, and that's what I'm saying about horror movies. Like, there are horror movies that are just out there, and you just look at them and like, this is nothing about this. Like, there's aspects of it that are horror-esque, but for the most part, they're very just like they're just trying to tell a story, and oops, suddenly this person dies.
Are we saying psychological thriller falls into this category, or?
Depends.
You can decide, because I would say that that's a different category.
I like psychological horror.
That's a different thing too. I
Yeah.
think if it's under horror, because the thing about horror is like you don't just add a monster or something or a ghost and then it becomes a horror movie.
Do the Scooby-Doo movies count as horror?
No.
Wait, which one?
I would
The
count
live action.
No, they're supernatural comedies.
That is exactly what it is.
That's what they
It
are.
is a supernatural comedy
But so I like Nope.
featuring Mr. Bean.
To go into your point, I like Nope. I also liked Barbarian.
Barbarian.
Barbarian was great.
You were there too. You didn't enjoy it as much.
Yeah,
as you
but
did.
because that was a movie that also I feel like had great like traditional horror aspects to it, but then kind of flipped it on its head.
It hit all the tropes and then misguided you.
Yes.
And it's such
Yes.
a great
Yes.
thing that they
Yes.
don't do often anymore
Yes.
in recent horror movies and just movies in general,
Right.
really. But I just love the fact of the misdirection because that was such like a thing back
I was
in the old
not
days.
expecting that at
No.
all. Like the first third of the movie is what you expect, and then it entirely flips.
What about Smile?
Smile's a horror movie.
Yeah, that's
yes.
a horror movie.
I did
yeah.
like Smile too. I enjoyed it.
It's a horror movie. I wouldn't consider it the like scariest thing out there. It's creepy, which is its own category of horror.
I would classify it's a paranormal horror, which is
Sure.
generally more of what I like in general. I'm not a huge slasher blood and gore fan.
No.
I like the supernatural paranormal.
I love slashers, and for the reason that I said in the beginning, like they're so funny.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever seen something against evil is what it's called.
Ash versus
Ash versus Evil or
something like that. Yeah. The
I
one
don't-
with
I
Bruce
mean-
Campbell?
No, there's one. It's like two hillbillies, and yeah, it's already a great start. It's like two hillbillies. And there's like a group of college students who like come to like go party because it's like summer vacation.
Yeah.
And the whole movie
it's just them slowly dying, and you think it's gonna be the hillbillies who are killing them. They're killing themselves out of freak accidents, and it's hilarious.
That sounds awesome.
There's all these situations because they think that the hillbillies are like the ones who are trying to murder them, so they're doing stuff in order to kill them. But in doing so, they get themselves into very bad situations and end up killing themselves somehow.
Yeah.
And that's the epitome of like, this is what horror movies are about. They're so dumb. They go into weird tangents and then they just end up hurting themselves for whatever the fuck reasons.
Can we talk about Velocipaster? Does that count as a horror?
It's not a horror movie.
What do you call
But it is.
What is it called? Have any of you heard of Velocipaster?
Oh.
Because, oh my god, one of the best, worst movies I've ever seen in my life. My friend who I was watching it with and I were just laughing the whole time.
And that's what I love, because it's so dumb.
Because the reason why I asked is because it has that same vibe of a movie that has qualities of something else and has kind of horror qualities in a way, but it's not really horror movie.
It's not hitting the marks.
It's not scary. It's just bad, but it's so funny.
And that's the thing. That's what I love. They don't hit the marks that you need to hit for a horror movie.
Yeah.
Because horror movies, you gotta build an atmosphere, you gotta feel uncomfortable in an atmosphere, and then you gotta build up with everything, making sure that, there's this thing or person or whatever that you need to deal with, and how are they gonna handle that? And Velocipaster knows what it is, honestly.
I hope so.
And it's just going off rail or every little thing. It's great.
It's lovely. But I want to ask you about, because other horror movies I like is I really like the Conjuring movies.
Sure,
I haven't seen all of them, but I like The Conjuring. I like Annabelle. I think those are great movies. I've only seen the first Paranormal Activity. That was spooky at the very end. The rest of the movie was fine, but the last 5 minutes, I slept with my light on that night.
Have you ever watched The Witch? What is it? No, not The Witch. What is the one?
Blair Witch Project.
Blair Witch.
I have, and that's another one that also did a great job with build up, and I feel like the ending.
The marketing behind that was so good.
Yeah, it was.
Did you ever?
Because it was marketed as a real
life event that happened.
Yeah. I love. That's one of those things that I love, the lore around it. Yeah. And then the movie itself was pretty good, and then the ending was kind of
that's where
controversial. But I did like that kind of stuff. But to me, that was the same as going back to the Babadook. I love the first 2 acts of the Babadook.
The gay icon.
And then the payoff wasn't great, and I feel like that's one of the hardest things to do in horror movies, from just what I have observed in horror movies, is the final act, right? The payoff to everything, because the build-up is great, but then how do you pay it off? Because I saw La Llorona, too, the movie that came out a few years. Similar thing, right? The first 2 acts and the build-up to it was great, but then the final act and the confrontation with her was just kind of, goofy and, kind of forced and didn't really make sense, and it's that's a disappointing end.
Yeah, I feel you.
Would you say Alien or Predator
Absolutely.
fall into this category?
Sci-fi horror.
Psycho?
Sci-fi horror.
Okay. I heard psychological
because Alien was a good movie.
Alien is a great classic horror movie. I would put that on.
The Thing, too. That's a good horror movie. The Thing,
yeah. Oh, have you seen Psycho? The Alfred Hitchcock movie.
The one where he does that weird dance? Possibly.
Maybe. The Norman Bates and the shower scene. And
yeah.
Have you seen it?
I think so, if we're thinking about the same Psycho.
Yeah, I saw it recently, and that's a staple, right? That's one of the big movies people reference as this
and
is a horror
every
movie.
Type of media has some sort of
has a reference
to it,
or a spoof, and I saw it recently for the first time, maybe a year ago, and it's so freaking goofy, dude. It does not hold up. My friend and I, who I was watching it with, we both because we would watch movies and we would rate them at the end. I think Psycho got a 4. Like
out of 10.
Out of 10.
Damn.
Like it just wasn't good. Like the build up was fine in like the first act, and it did a similar thing with Barbarian, where like the first act was like one thing, and then the next two were kind of a separate thing, like related to the first, but like a different take on it. And that's where I feel like Barbarian was inspired by. I just think they did it better. Yeah. And maybe it was just like it's been 50, 60 years, and it's an older movie. Like I don't remember exactly when Psycho came out, but
and you do gotta consider that with any horror movies.
Yes.
Like, back in the time, this is how they kind of thought a lot of horror movies were good at, and it was for its time.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is I think for its time it was great, and I'm sure something like that hadn't really been seen before. It didn't age well. And it was goofy, and there's like that whole scene at the end, like, I don't think you could spoil Psycho, but there's the scene at the end where the investigator like gets stabbed and he's falling down the stairs. And there's a show that we watched, a crime show, comedy show called Psych, which, if anyone's heard of it, one of my favorite shows of all time, for sure. Fantastic show. And there's a whole like plot point where it was focused on Alfred Hitchcock movies, like the killer was doing that. And there was a scene where they basically replicated him falling down the stairs, and it looked so bad in the show. And I'm like, when I was watching the movie, I'm like, okay, this is my reference point.
Yeah.
There's no way that like it's gonna look better than that. But it looked it was so goofy and like ridiculous as he was falling down the staircase. And I understand that there's probably a limitation of how they had to film it. But it took me out of it, because I'm like, oh my god, this is terrible.
No, I get you. There's certain movies that have specific scenes that just take me out of things for whatever reason. There was one with like, it was like a Paranormal Activity kind of Annabelle movie. I forget what it was. It might have been The Nun. It might have been The Nun.
Oh, yeah. I wanted to watch that, but I never did.
But there's a scene in it where, like, they're like telling a story, and it's one of those little toys that you kind of like look through a little binocular, and you just kind of turn it, and it's like telling a story while it's spinning around.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like telling a story of like what it looked like to me was like
the viewfinders. Yeah. This is a different one.
No, it's like the little like merry-go-round kind of situation.
You know how like original animation, right? They had like a wheel spin. It's something like that. I think he's talking about. But I was thinking of the viewfinder.
I was thinking the one with the little disc that you put in.
Yeah, no, not those.
To go through each picture.
Those are iconic, but not those.
Yeah.
Nostalgia.
We didn't even talk about toys. Oh shit.
Anywho, but like. Yeah, they were just doing that, and the story was like telling something like who was like kind of like Slender-Man-ish, which is a whole media thing too.
Yeah.
But like as they were turning it, it was playing a song, and the song for whatever reason reminded me of Barney's like "I love you, you love me" situation, and it just took me out of it.
Yeah.
I was like in the theater. I think I was like with a buddy, and I was just laughing my ass off in the theater, and everyone's like very tense in the situation, like, oh, what's gonna happen, what's gonna pop out, and I'm over here laughing maniacally.
Josh is just thinking, let's be friends.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing about Megan too. Like, we all saw Megan, and I was so excited for Megan.
We should watch the R-rated one that they put on.
Oh, they did.
Peacock, I think.
Okay, yeah, because I know that they made it PG-13, and I know that was a thing that I feel like kind of hurt the movie, and if they do have the R cut, I want to see it.
Yeah, come over Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay, maybe, we'll watch it at some point, definitely. But like her dancing, well, I'm not gonna, but her dancing as she's murdering people kind of takes away the scary aspect of that, you know, like her being this.
Why should that still be in the R-rated one?
It might be,
yeah.
But I feel like there will be more around it to kind of beef it up. But also, what I want to say is, going back to Psycho real quick, because I know that some people might be like, oh, maybe you just don't like older movies. There's an old movie that's not a horror movie. It's called 12 Angry Men that came out in the 50s or 60s. Fantastic movie.
The one you recommended?
Yes, yeah.
I don't think I've watched it.
It's about, and it like takes place in one room, and it's about basically a jury convening to decide whether someone is guilty or not. And it's just them afterwards. You don't see the trial or anything. It's just these 12 men in a room talking.
Huh?
Okay.
No.
Were you okay?
I'm not comfortable. Keep going.
Okay, but that's a great movie, and that I think came out around the same time, or like in that it's a black and white movie, so it's an older movie. So I don't want people to think that I just don't like older movies. I just don't think Psycho aged well. Yeah. That's not to say older movies don't age well, because 12 Angry Men is probably in my top 10.
Yeah. Speaking of movies aging well, and I know we haven't done like a top 5 or anything.
Sure.
But 2 years ago, Josh and I went to see the latest Halloween movie.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
It was like...
The End?
What was it called?
Halloween Ends.
The End.
No, that was the most recent. Halloween Kills?
Halloween Kills.
So we saw that movie in theaters, and I enjoyed it, so I was like, oh, let's go watch the entire Halloween franchise. We watched the first movie. It was so slow.
Really?
Like, they try to play up the suspense by making everything slow, and you're just like, honey, I've got places to be. Like, you've got people to kill. Like,
you got people to kill. I got people to see.
like,
I mean, that's the thing about
time is
horror
moving
movies
like,
is like
so slow.
you need tension, and that comes with. You have to get the timing right. If it's too slow, it's too boring and you're not into it. If it's too fast, you don't get time to feel the stress of it.
Well, and I feel like, I don't know, maybe nowadays we don't have the attention span for the tension that we did 20 years ago or whatever.
I think that's valid.
But, it was just so slow. And, like, the thing is, it's slow, but it's like nothing's happening.
Yeah.
Like, they're just, like, he's, like, watching them, right? And she's just babysitting a kid, and it's like, okay, nothing's happening.
Yeah, there was a literal scene where I looked over to Ian and I was like, all right, they're just walking down the street on the sidewalk. I like looked at my watch. I'm like, 10 seconds, 15 seconds,
Like, and it
30 seconds. Okay, they're walking. We get
it. Just feels like there's not a point to the scene, and we put the movie in 2 times speed.
So much better.
Felt so much better. You could still understand the dialogue and everything, but like it just. The pace was so much better.
It made some scenes a little bit goofier, but not so much that it took me out of it.
Yeah.
There's just scenes where he's just like...
thing with storytelling
yeah,
in general,
when
pacing.
because it's Michael Myers when he's
good old Mikey.
When he's doing his slow walk but in 2 times speed, that's a little silly. It's like, I'm gonna get you.
Yeah.
Like it's a little silly.
It's great.
But for the rest of it, it was better.
Yeah.
But
Pacing's hard.
Pacing is hard. Adulting is hard.
But I don't remember, because I remember Auntie
We
showed
are
us...
adults now.
But I remember that Auntie showed us the first Scream movie, right? And I don't think that one had as much a problem with pacing. Like, things were happening. But that's also what happens with a slasher, I guess. And Halloween's not a slasher, is it?
I would say it's a slasher.
100%
Yeah,
a slasher.
That's true. But not as many people died, right?
No, but it is a slasher.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one, it's like, basically the entire cast... Except for, like, one person dies.
So what I feel like, because I don't know the actual definition of a slasher movie, but I feel like the definition of a slasher movie for me...
People get slashed.
Is, well, yeah, that. But you have an entity, person, monster thing that comes up within, like, 20 minutes into the movie, and that's when things start spiraling downwards and people start dying little by little. You always have... This is how every horror movie slasher starts. You start off the opening scenes like... Hello? Yeah? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll take a cheese pizza or whatever. And then all of a sudden, there's
you
just...
want to play a game?
And yeah, or there's someone in some way. It's like, all right, that'll be $25.50. We're at the front door. And he's like, what? No way. And then they go to the front door, and they're like,
no way.
And they're like, where's my pizza? And then die. First scene, it's always.
Oh my god, where's my pizza?
Yeah.
I don't have your pizza, but I have this knife.
Yeah, and that's always the first scene that there's always it's normally a woman who dies in some horrific way, kind of off screen sometimes after the first slash, and then you go back to the summer of 2020, right. Whatever. It's like, hey guys, we're about to go to summer vacation. Let's all get together and go to a cabin
And
in
order
the woods
pizza.
and
Next
order
to a
pizza.
creepy lake where there's a lot of rumors of people dying, but it's probably just rumors.
So, Google says that it's defined by the use of generally a masked killer harassing and murdering groups of people.
They are being harassed.
It is harassment, yeah.
So
There's nothing more harassing than trying to murder someone.
That's
true.
But that is every slasher.
Yeah.
Always, girl getting pizza.
Girl gotta have her pizza.
Girl getting pizza of some weird form is oblivious, gets slashed, and then you hit the intro.
You hit the cut.
But speaking of, like, we still haven't seen Halloween Ends, but I did enjoy Halloween Kills. And then we saw Scream 7.
Scream 7?
6.
It was 6.
We saw Scream 6, and I really enjoyed that one.
I wanted
having
to see
only
it.
seen the first and the sixth one.
Yeah.
And shout out to the song by Demi Lovato.
I just want to see it because of Jenna Ortega. I love her.
She's good.
Yeah.
She
starts in like 5, right?
Yes, because there's a whole lore situation.
Yeah.
This October, maybe even if we do that trip, we'll watch the movies.
All right. It's good. The sixth one was really well paced. Because the thing about Scream in general is that it is aware of the tropes that come in with the horror movies, and they play on that, and that's their whole bit.
Yeah, they talk about like, oh, well, you're gonna die. Oh, you're a main character. You can't die. But in the newer movies, main characters are now available to kill because we're playing on nostalgia, but also you're expendable now.
Yeah, they play on that, which is beautifully done. They do it in a fine way. We're like, yes, we're aware of this. So now you're telling us what we should be expecting, which is fine, because at the same time you're still wondering who the fuck is the killer.
Well, and then apparently they can subvert expectations too, which I like that.
Yeah.
Because then you know what to expect, but then you don't know what to expect, and when you get something unexpected, that's surprising, and that's fun, and that's part of the movie.
And that's an example of a good slasher movie. But slashers in general are just very straightforward.
They're very generic.
It's very generic and straightforward. This one expands on it. It's like, okay, but we can also do these things.
I like that. I think that's
great.
So, while I was Googling, because I wrote down a bunch of horror movies, so I think we can go through them.
Alright.
We already did talk about Nope a little bit.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. We
movie.
saw it in Arizona. That was pretty cool.
We did see it in Arizona.
I saw it by myself.
We saw it in a group of like 10 people.
We did.
Second movie, I put Get Out because
yes, I was thinking about that too. I loved Get Out. I saw it like I don't know if it was opening weekend, but I saw it in Burbank at the AMC, and there's a bunch of people there, and it was I think we went with some friends and stuff, and it was so much fun. It was such a good movie, and I was not expecting it to be good.
Is that the one with the racist family?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I love the twist too. Like you can see the family's racist, but then when the girlfriend's racist too, I'm like, oh, this is great. I don't know why I'm whispering.
No.
Can you hear this? Is this good audio? But I loved Get Out. That was such a fantastically done movie. And the pacing was good, and the tone was good, and the twist was good. Again, Jordan Peele knows what he's doing.
The mom was the creepiest, especially with like the cup. Okay, next one I have on my list, which we did kind of talk about, was Megan.
Megan, yes. Again, I am waiting to see the R cut. I enjoyed the PG-13. I just felt like it wasn't very horror.
No, it was very goofy.
It was goofy. It was the tone was good. I think a lot of the movie, and you can see where it was going. And I think the scene with the dog was fantastic, as sad as it was, because we don't condone animal violence. But
especially doggy violence.
But again, it was great, and it served the movie, and I thought that was great. It's just, again, I think that it needed more to make it a good horror movie.
So the next one on my list, which we kind of touched on. Look, I wrote a lot of these down, and then naturally other things came up. But Scream, like the entire franchise.
I've only seen the first one. I wanted to see the sixth.
They're good. They kind of play into they dig into the whole idea of horror movies, which is great.
So. Yeah, because like in I don't know about 5 too, but like in 6, like some of them are actual like film students studying horror. So that's why they're also talking about like the tropes and who's allowed to die and stuff like that, because they're studying this stuff, which was cool. Next one I have is Don't Worry Darling, which we all saw in theaters.
Is that a horror movie?
I think it's considered psychological horror.
It was the one with
Harry Styles and Olivia Wilde.
Oh, okay, that one.
Florence Pugh and Chris Pine.
I guess that's horror.
I don't know if I would say that's horror. I would say that's more like psychological thriller, maybe. But
it was listed on very psychological horror.
Yeah, but they listed Shape of Water, and that's not a horror movie either.
Well, these people.
But good movie. I really enjoyed Don't Worry Darling. I remember that was one of the movies around that time when I first saw the trailer, and I put that on my list of movies I wanted to watch.
Yeah, it looked very interesting and different.
And it was, and I think there's going to be a second one. And
I hope there's a second one. Although apparently the cast does not get along very well.
Yeah, there's so much drama around that movie. I'm sure everyone's heard of it, but people do not get along. Things did not go well, and I think that's really unfortunate because
they left it on a cliffhanger.
And there's so many questions that could be answered, and I would love to know the answers to those questions because it's such an intriguing world and intriguing setup, and I really like the movie. I wouldn't say it's horror though.
No, it's a cult movie.
Okay, so the next one I have, which I think we've talked about a little bit before, is LGBT horror movie They Slash Them.
They Slash Them. Oh, I haven't seen it.
It's not
like they and then slash.
The way
like
that you
somebody would list their pronouns.
Yes. Have not seen it.
It was
technically horror.
It is a horror. It is a slasher.
It is a
It
slasher.
says it in the name.
It's a it's
That's
psychological and slasher, but
I would.
A psycho slasher?
psycho slasher.
Which is the name of a great horror movie.
That's also the name of a great metal band that I don't think is real, but that's the name of my next metal band is Psycho Slasher.
But yeah.
I would definitely say, again, it is technically a horror movie, but they do things that just get you out of the moment too much. Like, it's not great. There's a whole moment where they start singing to Pink, a Pink song, and you're just like, what is going on here? I'm supposed to be terrified for these, like, queer kids, and all of a sudden we're just all singing about how it's great to feel yourself even though you're not perfect and all that, and it became wholesome, and then now we're going back to slashing people.
It does kind of ruin the vibe of a horror movie. Even a thriller movie, like...
You can't take it out of the atmosphere so abruptly.
Yeah, but it's also like a common thing that people do is like, you're dealing with something and you want that moment of like, kind of like bliss and release to like separate yourself from it.
I agree. What I'm saying is that they did it kind of abruptly, and that it took me out of the moment.
I don't think it was a greatly executed film.
No.
I think it was a great premise, and I like a lot of things that they did, including the sing-along. Like, I think it could have fit in a little better to not as much take you out of it, but, I mean, a lot of people deal with their trauma by using either humor or music and stuff like that.
Sure.
So I think it's a cool thing to add.
Sure.
Like, oh yeah, these kids are also dealing with their trauma the same ways that we do. But it was very like, oh my god, life sucks. Pretty please. Like, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It is good to touch on that because it makes it more human, and that's part of like what makes horror movie is like if you can relate to the person, it makes it scary because then you feel like you are the person.
Yeah. So and that's why I liked it. I mean, I was had a blast during those 3 minutes.
Sure.
Next
but
one on
no other time.
I mean, the rest of it you're not supposed to have a blast because it's horror.
Well, yeah, but you also don't relate to a lot of people.
But next movie I have on my list is Parasite.
I haven't seen it, but I want to. I've heard nothing but good things about it.
Josh really liked it. He showed it to me. I thought it was... I didn't hate it. You tell everybody I hate it.
I'm being exaggerated.
But, no, for... A lot of other people don't seem to think this way, but I thought it was very predictable from my point of view. Like, I was like, oh, I think this is going to happen next, and it did. And stuff like that. So I wanted it to surprise me and kind of go somewhere I didn't expect, and it didn't do that for me. Mm-hmm. But I know you said you didn't feel the same way.
I think, yes, it is predictable, but at the same time, I was there for the journey of it all. Like, how they were going to go about getting to that scene that was going to come up.
See, because it won, like, Best Picture and stuff, I was expecting it to take me somewhere I didn't expect.
Yeah, the hype was too high for you, and it just didn't reach your expectations. It happens to a lot of people.
It wasn't even just, like, the hype, though. I just was like, oh, it's so good, I shouldn't be able to predict what's going on.
Ian also didn't like Barbarian as much as we did, so it could just be a taste thing.
I also thought it was a little predictable, but...
Well, yeah, and that's fine. That's your opinion.
Next movie or franchise that I have on my list is one of your favorites. Chucky.
Yeah, Child's Play.
I haven't seen any of the Chucky anything.
Okay. So, I haven't seen any movies, but we watched the TV show, which is pretty solid for a horror comedy TV show.
First season, solid. Second season, it goes into the whole... Okay.
Get your pillow prepped.
Okay, time to go into my fucking Child's Play, Chucky corner. Zoom in. Okay, so...
Josh rant time.
Used to be...
It's rare, but it exists.
Used to be very terrified of Chucky because dolls are creepy.
Agreed.
General, I will punt it because it's creepy looking. I don't want to be around it. Alright? I was traumatized by it as a kid. And Child's Play was the very first horror movie that I ever watched.
Oh.
And I saw it just randomly in passing while my cousins were watching it, and it just terrified me, and I was like, I'm not going to watch it anymore. And then as I grew up, I was like, okay, you know what? I can handle horror. Now I'll watch it. First movie, solid. You build up the atmosphere. You know what you're going for. You're going for this voodoo child's toy possession, and it's great. The whole premise is he just wants to get into a new host body,
and he goes on a murder spree, and you know what? For its time, very cool, very intricate. No one really thought about the whole possession thing and going to the extent of how it is, of like, oh yeah, the more days he's in that child's toy, he becomes more of a toy himself, but then the toy also becomes more flesh-like and actually becomes his body, and it's great. You know, you build up the atmosphere, you get to meet the young kid Andy, and now since he's the first one who ever interacted with him, he becomes the one that he has to host, because there's this whole voodoo. He literally has a book called Voodoo for Dummies, which is great.
That's funny.
Yeah, and he goes in Voodoo for Dummies, like, you have to go to your first host who sees you when you're in your new body or whatever, and that's the only person who you can connect to. And it's the whole thing with Shambhala, which is like the voodoo god of this universe. And it's great. You get the second movie, you expand on that. He's a little bit older, but all the stuff happens again, and you're like, all right, horror movie, like, it's kind of what you expect. Like, they kind of follow the same story, and you know, you kind of just add on to it with another murder spree. Then you get to the third movie, and that's when things start derailing. We're going into different territory. Third movie comes around, and you get him and the Bride of Chucky, and that's where they bring in Jennifer Tilly, which everyone says, like, this is when Chucky became its own thing and became more comedic. Because Jennifer Tilly brings such comedic value in a way that's so, like, Jersey bitch comes into the play and tries to make something new of herself, and ends up getting murdered and becoming a doll. And it's great. It's lovely. I love it personally because it still follows the whole idea of horror, like, but now there's like another thing that can come into play, with another person who can possibly kill people, and it adds to it, and the whole story becomes, like, more intricate. Then it gets even more derailed with the Seed of Chucky, where that Chucky whole series is no longer a horror movie. It becomes a horror comedy movie. So there's the Seed of Chucky, where they end up having a kid, and, you know, through the power of voodoo, they spit into the process, and they end up having a child who is a doll, but has the soul of a human, I guess.
Sure.
I guess that works. Because, you know, why not?
I guess.
And the whole movie is just following the perspective of the kid and how he wants to meet his real parents. He sees a show of Chucky and the Bride of Chucky, Jennifer Tilly, and he sees, like, this marking on Chucky's hands, like, oh, made in China. I have the same mark too. That must be my dad. And like, sure, why not? And, you know, there's a weird scene where they come back to life, and then they're trying to make new babies so that the doll can now be into the baby host, so it can grow up as a child. And there's a whole scene with, like, masturbation. There's a whole other scene where they go into, like, this weird ninja style fighting scene. It goes off the it does.
Just like Velocipaster.
Exactly. He does like backflips.
Velocipaster is good as Chucky.
And there's this whole scene, and it gets so silly, and that's where the Chucky series comes into play, and you're like, okay, you know what? There's a whole more movies for that, but that's kind of like the two sides of Chucky. There's the horror aspect of it, and there's like comedic. The first season of the Chucky series has a great horror theme, and you're getting back to the roots of what Chucky is, and it's amazing. It's very much like the first half, and the second season, you go towards the comedic version of it all, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not what exactly. Different. It's very different. You have two different types of movies that you're watching.
A lot more Jennifer Tilly. We love Jennifer Tilly.
The only thing I know about the series is when I went to Horror Nights a couple years ago, at the end of the tram ride and Horror Nights, after we left the maze part of it and we're going back, they just played like almost 10-minute trailer of the show before it had even came out, because that was the thing they had been working on and was promoting. And so I'm just sitting on the tram, just like watching, like, basically the whole, like, a huge synopsis of the first season, and I'm like, why would I watch the show when I feel like I just watched the show? Yeah. And obviously I didn't, because I wasn't. But it was like the longest trailer that they were playing, and I'm like, Universal, you gotta cut these trailers down.
Which, just speaking of Horror Nights and horror shows, what did you think of The Last of Us?
This show? Yeah. I thought it was amazing. I thought it stayed true to like the game, which is great. There's obviously a lot of scenes that got cut off because a lot of the game itself is just like walking from one space to another. Whatever, you find monsters or whatever. That's not important to the story. They hit all the main points. It is exactly how I wanted it to be, where everyone complains like, oh, you don't really see the monsters all that much. It's like, the monsters are the humans.
Yeah.
That's every like post-apocalyptic world. It's like, it's never actually the thing that destroyed the world. It's still the humans that are interacting with each other.
Well, and there's plenty of fungus and what do they call them? The clickers?
Clickers.
Yeah, there's plenty of that. Like, I mean, sure, they didn't show up in every episode, but I think it was also very important to tell the stories of the people living in this world. Yeah. Because that's what makes it scarier.
Yeah, 100%. What are you saying?
My only grievance with that, because I agree wholeheartedly, my only grievance is that one episode where it ended with, like, the ground, like, caving in and all, like, this horde of clickers coming out. And the big abomination dude coming, like, ripping, and then we never saw anything ever again. And
was it when Tess died?
No, after Tess died.
Or is that when the other lady
That was the other lady. That was before. That was when they were escaping with Sam and Elliot.
Who's Elliot?
The deaf kid.
The deaf kid and his brother. They were escaping
town. So when that one lady
died,
right?
and the other dude and he got his head ripped off or whatever, and I'm like, oh, that's crazy. Like, that's a lot of clickers. Then the big dude, and like, that's gotta come back, right? Because that was not really in the game at all. And so I'm like, okay, that's really cool. Like, we're gonna address this at some point, right? And then just never saw anything ever again. And I'm like, okay,
it can't be perfect.
I mean, but that is my only real grievance with that. And I think overall, that is the perfect example of how you adapt a video game.
Sure.
Yeah, you change some things because some things need to be changed. Some things look better on the screen as compared to in a video game or whatever to keep people engaged. I know the story of Bill and
Frank
was very...
I know who you're talking about. I don't know names.
It was very different in the game than it was in the TV show, but I loved that story. I never saw the game.
Because in the game, it wasn't a thing. Like, you meet Bill after Frank has already left and essentially died, but they separated they had a whole thing that you kind of pick up through notes and stuff you find, but that's not how you can tell a story in a TV show or in a movie. So I think having a whole episode focus on that was really interesting.
It was such a beautiful.
I think that it was a really great decision.
Story.
Nick
Offerman, shout out to you.
Yeah, I love Nick Offerman.
You did that amazingly, from Ron Swanson to gay Ron Swanson.
I mean, pretty much.
It was beautiful, and it showed a whole different side to gay love stories.
I would have,
and also just love stories in general.
I would have loved though for Joel and Ellie to have met Bill when they were passing through, but that's just a small thing. I love how I love the letter to Joel or whoever else may happen to pick it up, but probably Joel. It's like, that's funny. I thought it was such a great show. I'm excited for the next season. I don't know the story. I know some of the story of the second game, and I know that there's a lot of controversial about it, and I know that they're going to separate it into 2 seasons, which from what I know seems like a wise choice. But I think overall, as an adaptation, just in general, they took a fantastic game that is critically acclaimed by pretty much all to be one of the best narrative-driven games with a fantastic story, and they adapted that successfully into a great TV show that hits the same points, that changes some things, because like Ian said, don't work as well. Like in the game, the way the infestation was spread was through spores, and in this one it was like tendrils, right? And the directors were like, we didn't want our actors in gas masks for half the show. And it's like, that makes total sense.
Yeah, we all just lived through COVID.
That's a total well, and also you can't express in a gas mask, right?
And that's a creative choice that makes total sense.
Absolutely, and I think that's great in little things, but then they also knew, because they were fans of the game and of the franchise.
Well, the creator of the game was very involved, and somebody who loved the game.
And they knew what scenes they needed to keep in, because there are some scenes in the show that are the exact scene from the game, and when those come up,
the points.
It's amazing.
So we've talked about this with other shows that have been adapted from like a book or a game into TV. That you wish it was longer because they skip through stuff. Did you think that The Last of Us should have had more episodes so it could cover more stuff, or do you think
I think it
did everything it needed to in the 10 episodes?
The small grievances I had were just with like I said, with the horde that we never saw again and was never resolved. I think that Tess's last stand in the show was not as badass as it was in the game.
Yeah.
And I think
you said Tess wasn't in the game.
No, she was. I just didn't remember well.
Yeah.
You lied to me.
No.
Her last stand in the game was freaking badass as hell. And I get that they changed some parts of it because in the game she basically fought off against like Fedra agents, like military agents. And I get that they didn't want to do that here because they didn't want to have that kind of like the government's the bad guys vibe, which I think is fine. And I think it's fine that it was a horde of clickers, but the fact that she kind of stood there and like didn't really
just let it happen.
Yeah, just kind of. And I heard that it's because the virus was already taking over her or whatever, and like she didn't really have. She kind of was losing her agency, and I get that, and that's a cool way to go about it. But it wasn't badass, right? I thought she was like, she's kicking the barrels down, and she's gonna wait there, and she's gonna throw it down, and like something cool. But instead, it was a very passive, very almost sad, and the weird kiss thing. I'm like, that's unnecessary.
Yeah, that was gross. But it was like a forgettable death when she should have had a very.
When it should have been so much memorable cooler, because in the game it's so freaking awesome what she did, and I was so excited for her last stand, and I was a little disappointed. But like it is a relatively small grievance in the grand scheme of things.
Same for me, because for me the show itself was like it hit all the points, but there were some things that I was like, okay, the game itself, the game loved to show Joel the perspective of like two sides of a coin.
Yeah.
So there are people that you would meet that like, okay, this is what would happen if you chose to be alone all your life. You would be like this person.
Bill.
Yeah, that this represents that person. And then this is the other person. It's like, this is what happens if you chose to be a part of a community, his brother or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that was to show Joel kind of like two halves of like what he could have and which side will he choose overall because of that. Yeah. Because each thing has their own grievances, each thing have their own positives, but like what you decide is up to you. But they don't really hit those points, really. They kind of just want to make it a little bit more happy-ish. Mm-hmm. Like, with Bill's situation, sure, it was, like, sad that he died, but he still died with someone he protected, that he wanted to protect.
I mean, yeah, but showing two different sides of a coin, like, one doesn't have to necessarily end badly and one end positively. I mean, you could have a happy ending in two different ways.
It's true. Yes, I agree. But both of them in my head were sticking more to like a positive kind of view of it all.
Because in the game, which I think what Josh is saying is Bill was alone. Mm-hmm. And he was alone essentially because of his attitude and because of how he was. And he was very stubborn and unyielding. And he had someone with Frank who was willing to put up with it. But because he was so stubborn and gruff and like unyielding, he was very unlikable, and so things didn't work out. And so he ends up on this very solitary path, who he knew Tess and Joel because of, their situations were similar and they crossed paths like they did. But it's like, this is what Joel could be if he shuts people out like Bill did, right? Versus Tommy, who was very embracing of other people and created this community and has a community and has safety virtually, versus Bill, who's on his own and jerry-rigging traps and like just struggling to survive really because of his stubbornness. And Joel could go either way, right? And right now, because of what he's lost, he's very sheltered off to the world. He's very like, I can do things on my own, I don't need anybody. And the thing about Tess was she was the one person who after Tommy left, or after he separated from Tommy and after his daughter died, the one person he was beginning to trust and the one person he could trust. And so it's like, but then he loses Tess, and so it's like, what direction is he gonna go? or is he going to go somewhere in the middle? And I think that's kind of eventually where he ends up. And that was something that I really liked about Joel's character. And I think that resonated a lot with Joel's character is we know he's a good guy, but he's also severely flawed. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense because we know what he's been through. And we know what he's been forced to do, and that's how he survives. Mm-hmm. And the ending, which I know a lot of people, even of the show, did not like the way the show ended. Because a lot of people didn't like the way the game ended. But I think it's such a perfect ending for Joel. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, so he brings Ellie to the Fireflies.
Oh, yeah.
And they realize, like, we might be able to do something with her immunity, but she's going to have to die in the process of research. And so Joel is like, well, I don't want that to happen, obviously, because he's grown, she's become his surrogate daughter, and he's grown to care about her. And so he chooses, essentially, to kill all of the Fireflies and rescue his daughter. And a lot of people don't like that ending because they're like, oh, well, that's not a good ending. Like, that's not, like, that's, you know, he was selfish. It's like, yeah, absolutely he was selfish. He has lost everything.
And now he's choosing to fight for what he loves.
The one person he has, whether she hates him for it, whether everyone hates him for it, whether it's a good choice or a bad choice, he is making the choice he wants to make for once. And he is not going to lose the one person he has. Is that a good option? I don't know. Is that a bad option? I don't know. That's the whole point. So it's morally ambiguous.
Is the second season going to have both of them in it still?
Parts of it, yeah, sure.
Oh, because did the second game have both of them in it?
Yeah. Parts of it.
Yeah, parts of it.
Does one of them die?
Yeah. I mean, he's old.
From what I know of the game, I don't know.
Pedro Pascal makes him look great.
Well, yeah. Pedro Pascal is also the perfect cast. Whoever decided to cast Pedro Pascal as Joel,
we love you.
Pedro's amazing. Did a fantastic job.
You're always welcome on the podcast.
I cannot. Yeah, we're gonna start having celebrity guests now. I can't imagine anyone else playing Joel. I think he did such a fantastic job.
And Ellie, like, she did amazing.
She did too. Yeah.
It was always so weird though. Like after an episode, they do like little extra scenes, and she is so British.
I know.
She's British.
So British.
I'm like, what the heck?
I'm like, wow. Like
she did great too. Bella Ramsey. Shout out to Bella Ramsey.
I also love the little cameos it did with the people who voiced.
The voice actors, yeah.
They were both in it. Both Joel and Ellie were in.
Yeah, like
you'd Ellie, be like, oh, that's
in that scene with Ellie, because she played her mom essentially.
Yeah. And like, that's great.
And when she was screaming, I'm like, it's Ellie! Oh my god, that's so cool. And then Troy Baker showed up, which is awesome. He voiced Joel, and I'm like, this is so cool. And you could just tell the people who made this really cared about it. As a property, as a product, as fans of the game, they wanted to do it justice, and that shines through so brilliantly. And that's how you do it. And that's a problem with a lot of franchises these days, is they're putting people in charge who don't care about the product. Who don't care. Yes, 100%. Bless you, by the way. But like, yeah.
I really had that stuck in my throat.
Yeah, I know. I was feeling it too, honestly. But who don't care about or respect the franchise, who are just in it for the money, like, oh, this is going to make money.
I was going to say...
and that's the difference.
It makes me think of Marvel, but like... through phase 3 Marvel, where you could really tell they were putting thought into the stories. They had it all planned out. Endgame was, I mean, maybe not the best movie of all time, but it was the greatest, like, finale to a 10-year saga that we've all been going through. It had plenty of fan service, but it was like, it wasn't forced. Like, the whole Avengers Assemble or what, like, it was all great stuff.
Because they did the groundwork to get there.
Yeah, and it's like, now for, like, Star Wars and stuff, they just expect, like, oh, you're gonna love it.
Star Wars, the sequel is just action movies with lightsabers, and we say, may the Force be with you. But if you take out the lightsabers, and you take out any reference to the Force, it's not a Star Wars movie at all. It's just a generic action movie. It could be Fast and Furious. You know, they just replaced... You know, because it's the same... It's an action movie. It's not a Star Wars movie. And throwing in lightsabers and saying, oh, it's the Force, without any understanding of either of those anyway... When has anyone with a lightsaber ever been slashed up the back and been fine in 2 weeks? Like, that is just...
Who did that?
I mean, it cauterizes, so it's fine.
Anytime we've seen a lightsaber hit anybody, they're severely damaged. You know what I mean?
If something goes up your back and slices your entire vertebrae and spinal cord, you're not surviving.
You're not. No, I don't care what kind of
got slashed like that.
Finn at the end of Force Awakens, Kyle rights up his back and he's fine.
Oh,
and
he
2
had
weeks
his armor.
I'm kidding. It's so clearly they don't understand the properties they're working with. They don't understand what a lightsaber means. They don't
see that?
And the whole with Carrie Fisher and the floating through space. I'm like, that's not how the Force works.
Like, she dies and she's just floating and then she's like,
and it's like, oh, but like that's the clear difference. Is you have people who understand and who respect and who care about the property versus people who don't. It makes a difference. And I would say the first season, especially of The Mandalorian, is another good example of that, because you had people who care about Star Wars and who know what makes Star Wars. And that was exemplified in The Mandalorian, at least the first season.
And you had Baby Yoda. Well, because it wasn't the Baby Yoda show in the first season.
It wasn't. It has become that very much.
It has become that because he's been a cultural phenomenon. Josh hates Star Wars. Well, he doesn't like Star Wars very much. He's not a Star Wars fan, but he loves Baby Yoda Grogu.
He is adorable.
Like, he has the most merch of Baby Yoda that I've seen.
He's an icon.
Yeah. Alright, I think we're getting too far from horror, so we're gonna run it in. We'll have a Star Wars episode one day.
I was gonna bring it back, but okay.
But, yeah, horror movies. We didn't get to touch much on other video games or TV shows or anything. That could be a whole other thing, but do we want to do a top 5 horror?
Well, I wanted to bring up one more that we haven't.
Okay, yeah, finish your list.
Well, so I had Halloween and Alien, but we already kind of touched on
Alien is great. First 2 movies, fantastic. I saw Alien Covenant, very boring. I heard Prometheus is garbage.
Is that in the Alien franchise?
It's a prequel.
Yeah.
And very disappointing that franchise lost it, because the Alien Isolation video game, amazing game. Absolutely incredible.
I have it. You can play it later.
It's fantastic. But the first 2 movies, definitely horror, definitely fantastic. Winona Ryder, you're great. Is that who?
No, it's Sigourney Weaver.
Sigourney Weaver, just kidding. Winona, you're also great, but Sigourney, you're also great. I don't know, people.
Right? It is Sigourney Weaver. Right?
Why are you looking at me for names?
I think you're right about that.
Okay.
Whoever you are, Ripley, you're great.
So I have Halloween, Jamie Lee Curtis. We all know that. We talked about it a little bit.
We love her. She's a One Piece fan.
She is, yeah.
Is that how you bring One Piece into the horror discussion?
I didn't even talk about it at all last time.
I know.
So I feel like
we haven't had One Piece corner. The last movie I have is A Quiet Place.
I love The Quiet Place. I thought it was very different from what I never saw. Quiet Place 2. I heard it was very disappointing, which is unfortunate.
Did we watched the second one? We watched the first one, right?
I watched the first one.
I really liked the first one.
No, I think we watched it in my apartment.
Because it was so different. And I love the way they went about it.
But that
I had such a hard time focusing though with without any dialogue or anything.
Oh,
like,
I love that because it was so different.
My I don't know, I'm undiagnosed, but my ADHD brain could not hold on to that movie.
My issue with that movie was the ending.
Yeah.
They finally have this whole scene where he basically sacrifices himself to save
his... Which was so sad because John Krasinski is great.
But literally 3 minutes later they fucking figure out how to kill them and they're like, alright, we got this. Like, what are you, just 3 more minutes?
Was the sacrifice even meaningful? To figuring it out?
Not really.
No. Well, and that's what I don't know if I've talked about this on here before, but deaths. They have to matter. They have to mean something, and if they don't, then there's no point.
Yeah.
And if it's just for the shock value or just for the immediate emotional value, then you're left empty with this exact thing of why was that character killed when it was unnecessary.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then A Quiet Place also reminded me of Bird Box.
Bird Box. Bird Box
with Sandra Bullock with the blindfold.
Bird Box got a lot of flack, and I don't really understand why. I felt when I watched it, I'm like, oh, this is just a quiet place, but instead of no talking, it's no seeing.
That's why
so I'm like, that's kind of derivative, but I think it's derivative, but it's not. And I thought it was fun. I thought it was good. I don't. The ending, I was like, I feel like nothing was really resolved here, but I enjoyed the journey of it.
I don't remember the ending. I remember thinking it was a solid movie.
I just think what people were upset about was how mean she was to the kids.
But that's part of her character because she's not someone who cares about kids, who is forced to have to take care of these kids either ethically or morally or whatever was the reason.
Yeah, but I'm sure that's the reason why people got rubbed the wrong way.
Well, the other thing is a lot of people thought it was hilarious that, like, they made fun of the whole blindfold and, like...
Well, and the boy and girl. Mm-hmm. But, like, I that didn't bother me because that's character development. In the sense that she's not a kid person, but also she is placed in this situation where she doesn't have a choice. Right? And so, well, I mean, she does. She could leave him, but she's choosing not to because she's not a bad person, whether she likes kids or not. And she's going to do her best, even if it's heavy-handed or whatever. And I think that speaks to the character. And again, that goes back to Joel, and that she's a flawed character. She's obviously a good character, good person, but she's flawed. And I don't think there's anything wrong. And she's
not your stereotypical good person who loves everybody and
who's doing this out of the goodness of her heart. And like, oh, I'm a nurturing woman. It's like, no, I don't.
It is the goodness of her heart because, I mean, obviously she cares for people and stuff like that. But it's not like, oh, I love you, like, you're my own now. Like, it's like very reluctant and like, I know I should do this even though I don't want to.
But I'm going to.
And I'm going to do it anyway because it's the right thing to do.
I don't resonate with the criticism of that.
Yeah, same. So, did you want to do a top 5?
I don't know if I have a top... Does anybody have a top 5?
Okay, my top 5s would be Child's Play movie. Love that. Freddy Krueger. Love the Freddy Krueger series.
Didn't even touch on that.
Yeah, it's a great slasher. One of the original ones.
Yes.
Then you got such great hits as the Jason series. All of them. Friday the 13th.
You do like the slashers, don't you?
I do like slasher. Because they're so easy and they're so comedic. Now, here's a movie that is great. I love it to death, but it's a psychological horror, so people don't find it as entertaining. It's called Blue Rose. It's an animated horror
movie. I thought you were going to say Circle.
I love Circle too.
Is that a horror movie?
It's a psychological.
It is
psychological. But Josh is saying that doesn't count.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Yeah, no, because it's not horror.
Yeah.
It's a subcategory of horror, but anyway.
Anywho. But yeah, it's called Blue Rose. I love this movie to death. It's so good. But the whole movie, first of all, it's an animated movie, which is different for a lot of people. People don't like animation sometimes, especially when it has to do with horror, because that's something that they don't associate animation with. But they do it so well, because this whole movie does great things with color theory. It makes it so like, oh, when you're in a specific scene, you know kind of what to feel and what to expect because the environment is now a specific color. You know who's talking because one person's color is coming up a lot more than the other person. And it's a great solid movie. It came out like in 1992 or something like that. It was old movie, but it's very good. Would highly recommend. I think it's called Blue Rose. It might be called something else. But it's about this woman who's like a K-pop star who wants to go into acting. Yeah, as one does. A J-pop star. It's Japanese.
Right.
And then she wants to go into acting, and then she kind of loses herself in like who she is as a person because of that. Because she feels like she needs to become a certain person to feel like ideal goals of the society. Because she came from being an idol to being an actress. So she goes through a whole like journey with herself with that, and then there's other people in her lives where she has to deal with a stalker because she is famous, and it goes on this whole little journey, and it's so good. By the end of the movie, you're just like, oh shit, a lot of stuff happened, and quite frankly, I'm confused, but I'm intrigued. So it's really solid. Blue Rose. Circle's not a horror movie, but it is good. I like the idea of having a whole movie just done in one single room, and they just work on that. It's great.
12 Angry Men.
12 Angry Men. I gotta watch it at some point.
Highly recommend.
Alright, what are you guys?
Wait, you didn't name 5.
That was 4.
4? The fifth one.
Did you count Circle?
No.
Wasn't that 3?
No, it was Chucky, Jason, the other slasher, Freddy Krueger, and then Blue.
Okay, my 5th movie that I love.
Are we only doing movies, or can we do TV shows?
I did an animated movie, so do anything that's horror themed.
Oh man, that broadens it.
It's coming out to me. It Follows.
I haven't seen it.
It Follows is such a great movie because the movie itself is basically the whole movie is about an STD. That's what it comes down to. And the whole movie is basically like, oh, there's this thing that's following you, and only the person who has like the infection, the primary infection, can see it, and it's constantly just walking at you. It doesn't run. It doesn't do anything. It just walks at you, and if it gets to you, it will kill you. But it's a smart thing. So like, if you're in a room, but there's only one exit, it'll just stay at the exit until you need to move, because it knows that you can't escape it. So it's a smart being that just literally walks. So the whole movie, every time you're seeing the main people talk, they always like to have a bunch of stuff happening in the background. In the background, you just see random people, and occasionally you just see someone just walking towards the camera. It's very slowly, and it's out of focus, but you know it's there, and so you're just wondering, like, is that the thing? Is it coming towards you? And they play on that, where they get to the point where there's certain scenes where there's just people randomly walking towards you, and they make note of that person walking, and they're like, oh no, I gotta run, and it's just some random person.
That's cool. I need to watch that.
It's a solid movie. Would highly recommend.
Do you want to go next?
Yeah, I don't know, and I forgot a lot of what we talked about in the beginning already, but I'll give a tentative top 5 horror movies. I'm gonna go with Get Out, because I think that's a solid movie.
Is this in any particular order?
No order, because it's fluid enough as it is. So Get Out. I'm gonna go with the Conjuring movies as a whole. I don't know exactly which ones I've seen. I have not seen all of them, but the ones I have seen, I have very much enjoyed. So I'm gonna go with those. I'm gonna go with Barbarian, because I did really like Barbarian and think it was a solid movie. I guess I'll put Nope on there, because I can't really think of others. And I also did I just think that the climax and the conclusion was a little lackluster.
I also love Keke Palmer.
Keke Palmer's great. And whoever the main guy is, I forgot his name, but he's fantastic too.
Daniel Kaluuya?
Something like that. Yeah.
We're sorry if we messed up your name.
Yeah, I'll put it on the screen. And then for the 5th one, that's hard. I don't know. Pass on 5th.
Because I lean very heavily into TV shows when I'm thinking about horror. And I'm thinking of things, I guess it's more psychological, but that's the type of stuff I prefer. I don't like slashers. I do think
like
Halloween was good. I do think Alien is good. And I do think Scream are all good. But my favorites have to be... Josh is going to say it's not horror.
I would say it's a thriller.
But I would put Alice in Borderland up there. Because, I mean...
I would agree. I think it has horror qualities, but I don't know if I would classify it as a horror.
I would also put Squid Game up there.
That's like a similar thing of Alice in Borderland.
I know. I would put The Last of Us up there.
Last of Us.
And then I would probably... I also have Courage the Cowardly Dog.
I'm amending my list. But you keep going.
Because Courage, I mean, as a child, that was probably one of the most terrifying shows that we watched.
Sure.
And it introduced a lot of horror elements because our parents didn't let us watch a lot of horror stuff. Like our aunt, when we did sleepover with our aunt
That's
and
where
grandma.
we saw most of the movies. Most of the classics was at grandma's house.
Yeah. We were safe there. But yeah, Courage the Cowardly Dog otherwise had a lot of horror elements and played with those things. So that's 4. And then I guess I would say Nope. Because I think that's my favorite of the ones we've watched in the last year.
Yeah, it's a solid movie. Again, great comedic timing.
Okay, wait, hold on. Talk for a second. I need to do slight research. This is a horror movie.
Honorable mentions being Scream, Halloween franchises. And Don't Worry, Darling, because that's another one I really liked in the last year.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Okay, this is a horror. Okay, great. Okay, I'm amending my top list. I looked at the list of movies I've watched with my friend over the last year to get some, because I know that I've seen some. So some that I'm keeping Get Out. I'm gonna keep Conjuring. I'm gonna keep Barbarian. But what I'm adding to it, Shutter Island. Have you seen Shutter Island?
No.
Leo DiCaprio?
No.
Great movie. Fantastic movie. It is one of those movies that I have heard people reference a lot, but I had never seen. It's basically about this guy who kind of goes to this like insane asylum on an island called Shutter Island.
Sure.
Very good movie, highly recommend. And then The Lighthouse. Have you seen The Lighthouse?
Is that the one with the
Lighthouse? Yes.
the guy who gets shipwrecked?
No, they're not shipwrecked. It's Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. It's a black and white movie, but it came out like a few years ago.
I know exactly which one you're talking about. Yeah.
I love that movie. It's so well done. It's so stylized. Definitely recommend it. It's very weird, and the ending is very strange.
There's a gay scene in it.
There's a lot of undertones for sure.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. So I'm adding Shutter Island and Lighthouse to my list.
It's a weird movie.
Very weird movie. Definitely recommend it. Both of them weird. Both of them recommend. There are some others. Honorable mentions. Nightmare Alley. I think it's a Guillermo del Toro movie. Also great. Very like period piece and kind of like the like 1800s, early 1900s, like Americana, like carnival-esque kind of scene. Great movie also. If Shape of Water counts as a horror movie, which I don't count it, I also did like Shape of Water. I know a lot of people didn't, but I thought it was a great movie.
For me, an honorable mention would be the game Amnesia.
Oh yes,
That's
we didn't even get that's a whole other thing we have to talk about games, because horror games are a whole other thing that I would love to dive into. But Amnesia, freaking classic for sure.
All right. Well, I think this was a good episode. Alright, thank you everyone for watching. We will see you next time for the next King of the Bean.
Let us know what your favorite horror things are in the comments down below.
And let us know what you classify as a horror movie, because we're clearly on different ideas of what is
the Shape of
Water
horror?
Is Alice in Borderland a horror movie?
Yes.
TV show.
TV show.
And don't forget to like and subscribe.
Thanks for watching.
Peace.
Alright, cool.
All right.